Hi there, and welcome to F-Word Conversations. My name is Lottie Roberts. I'm an emotional culture deck certified consultant and also a master elephant rider, which basically means I'm pretty much a full-on geek when it comes to emotions at work and the power and wisdom of emotions. So today we are going to, in these F-Word conversations, what they're all about is to really learn from leaders around their experience with embracing emotions at work. Because too many leaders, unfortunately, underestimate the role of emotions in the workplace. So what we're trying to do is flip that. And today I'm going to be talking with Amanda Thorpe for this F-Word conversation from Tax Management New Zealand. So welcome, Amanda. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Lottie. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
You're very welcome, and I'm really excited to talk with you because obviously you and me have been working together for about 8 months now. So in about 60 seconds, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I have about 20 years experience in organisational development and people transformation, mostly working internationally, but more recently in New Zealand. And I've been back in New Zealand for just over 18 months and lead people and culture at Tax Management New Zealand.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so what prompted you to start exploring the emotions and feelings at work? What was it that got you interested in bringing that into the workplace?
Yes, I was new to my role and really looking for an accessible way to have some conversations around culture and creating a great employee experience for our people. And I just came across the emotional culture deck and the work that you do, and even saw that it was a New Zealand kind of creation and it sounded wonderful. So just really wanted to explore that more. Was conscious that I wasn't working with people that have a lot of experience in this field, which I was more doing in some of my roles internationally. Whereas here, it was the culture conversation was something new. So I was looking for a really simple tool that I could use with everyone, regardless of what their background in this field was.
And so tell us a little about the journey in terms of how you've been using the deck at TMNZ and what you've experienced.
Yeah, so with your help and support along the way, thanks, Lottie, we ran some great workshops just to introduce the deck to our people and our teams. They had a good opportunity to play with it and use it to describe how they were feeling. That helped us identify our top 5 desired feelings or emotions and our top 5 undesired. So we looked at how people were feeling and how we want them to feel at work every day. So that was our starting point. We then used the deck a lot in different meetings. So our leadership team use it on a weekly basis. The other teams in our organization also use it to talk about how they're feeling today or how they'd like to feel in the week ahead. So that's been really helpful too. We're now at the point where we're identifying the actions and rituals that we can put in place at an individual, team, and organizational level to really continue to bring that great work to life.
Awesome. And obviously, when you say it like that, it sounds like it's just easy, plain sailing. But what kind of challenges have you faced? Even from the first point of presenting this to the leadership team, and just from what you've noticed, like what have been the biggest challenges along this journey?
I think the first one would be overcoming those preconceived ideas that feeling conversations are awkward and not necessarily something we want to have at work. So being new to my role, I think was conscious. I was conscious of that idea that it was P&C, softer, wishy-washy. So
yeah.
I needed to introduce it in the right way so they could see the value and also experience it for themselves. And I think that was key to overcoming that challenge. I think the second key challenge is really helping people go on the journey, and we're all at different places on this journey, to understand the personal accountability that we all have for how we show up at work, and how the things that we do and say can affect other people's emotions and feelings while at work.
And I mean, you were saying about introducing it in the right way. What was that like for you? Like what turned out to be the right way? Any sort of pointers and tips on that? Because it's like, even for me, my brain's going into, what constitutes the right way for your organization?
Sure. So for us, we introduced the deck and started using it as a leadership team to start with. We used the deck. We talked about how we were feeling, our top 5 desired emotions, our top 5 undesired emotions. And then with that experience, we were then able to think about how to take it to our teams and engage the wider organization. So after first using it with the leadership team, we ran 2 workshops for the wider organization. So approximately 50 of our people got to be involved in those workshops and have some fun with the deck, because after all, it's a really fun, engaging experience.
I'm glad you said that, because often the first thing that I see as a facilitator when I go in and I say, hey, we're going to talk about emotions at work, and you kind of get like people edging towards the door, or looking slightly scared, or a little bit of eye rolling. But the great thing about using this tool is that it is fun. Like, you can have fun with it. Obviously, it can also facilitate some quite very deep and meaningful conversations, but you can have fun with it. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. And then in terms of, so we've done there's been this journey, which it's been going for, I think it's about 9 months now. It's coming up to 9 months, which I think is also important, isn't it, to note that it's not like a one workshop and everybody's really feeling comfortable about talking about emotions. It is a journey. But what differences have you noticed along the way on that journey, across teams, and also in yourself as a leader as well?
Sure. I think we're better placed to create the right kind of environment for people to have conversations about how they're feeling. So as leaders, we're more comfortable having those conversations. I hope our people would say the same thing. And I also notice we have a bigger shared vocabulary that we can draw on to have those conversations. So sometimes I find our vocabulary around how we're feeling can be a little bit limited. So that's really allowing people to have a whole, and how many cards are there, Lottie? A whole number of words that they can kind of draw on to express how they're feeling. So we're having more of those conversations. They're more comfortable, and I think more impactful in terms of what we are able to do with those conversations and how we take them forward.
Yeah, that's great. And that what you were saying about having that wide range of emotions to start to, using the card as a prompt for those wider range of emotions is what we call emotional literacy. And I heard a really great example of the impact of that from Brené Brown's atlas of the Heart book, and she talks about if you went to the doctor and you had like a broken arm or something, or a real bad shoulder, and you got in the doctor's room and all of a sudden you had like tape over your mouth, you couldn't explain what was wrong with you, or you couldn't, and your hands were bound behind your back. And that's what it is like when we can't totally articulate how we're feeling. We know that something's not right, or we know when we're feeling in a great state, but we don't explore it to kind of really get to the what is it, the pinpoint. So have you seen the benefits of that in terms of your teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that analogy, because it's kind of, the power of language. So we're talking about how we actually articulate it, but we also use those words to think about how we're feeling. So if our vocab to the emotional literacy is a little bit limited, it's hard for us to even think about, well, how am I feeling? What's making this happen? So yeah, I've really noticed having that shared vocabulary across the organization is really important. So we can get to the specifics of, say, it's an issue much more quickly, because we're not debating so much whether we should be feeling like that or not, or what led to that. It's more, we've agreed that we want more of these emotions and less of these. So what can we do together to make sure we encourage more of those desired feelings and less of those undesired feelings, or to minimize the effect of those if we do find ourselves and feeling overwhelmed, or feeling the things that we don't really enjoy feeling, unappreciated, unsupported. Yeah.
So it's making it okay to talk about it, but also to honor people's process. So rather than kind of, we don't feel that we can say, I'm overwhelmed today, I'm anxious, even if someone else isn't. It's like being able to speak about that, hold space for that, and people knowing that they might not all feel the same, but they're respecting how everybody else feels, is an element of that coming through.
Absolutely. So the psychological safety to have those conversations is definitely there. We can always work on it, but the working with the emotional culture deck has allowed us to really grow that space for people.
Yeah, which is so powerful. And it's interesting because, I do talk about these workshops really helping promote psychological safety, but sometimes there's an expectation of, so when's the psychological safety part of this workshop? And it's like, no, it's very much an implicit, in the background thing that unfolds as a consequence of us being able to talk freely about how we're feeling. So it's great that you mentioned that. And, I talked about what you found like the biggest challenges in terms of getting people to talk about emotions at work. But in terms of your journey and to get your desired culture, so, you identified at TMNZ how people want, how people need to feel in our organization to be successful, and then how we don't want to feel, but we realize we might from time to time. What are the obstacles that you are noticing coming up that will be probably very personal to your organization in terms of moving towards your desired emotional culture, your desired, top 5 emotions, and I guess moving away from some of those undesired emotions? What kind of obstacles are you noticing coming up? Because that's where the rubber hits the road, and you don't always know that when you embark on that journey.
Great question. Just pondering that. I think just the current kind of state of affairs and what's happened in the world for the past few years, and has led to a situation where a lot of people continue to be under a lot of pressure. So I think overwhelmed is one of the emotions we don't want to, we want to do everything we can to help our people not feel like they're in an overwhelmed space, but it's hard. I think we've got big ambitions. There's a lot going on in the organization, and there are a lot of things externally in the world for people to be worried about or anxious about. Another one of our top 5. So I think doing what we can internally to encourage workplace well-being, a healthy approach to minimizing overwhelm. We're doing all that we can. We could always do more. But I think just balancing that with the external pressures is tough at the moment.
Yeah, and that's such a great observation and really well articulated. And it's definitely what I'm seeing across all the clients I'm working with is it's not just about the internal factors, it's the external factors as well. And just because they're external and they're outside of, the impacts that aren't caused by the company or the culture they're in, it's about the culture and the company taking responsibility to hold space for that as well. People are more anxious generally about what's going on and about health and wellness and illness, and also there's so many expectations. So I think it's a really good point that it is something that does hold back, I guess, how we want to feel, even though it might not be caused by the organisation, but the organisation taking responsibility and helping their teams with that is going to make it a better place to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
And any other things you've seen in terms of obstacles around, that have just maybe, or even surprises, like things that might have surprised you that have come up, positive or negative, that you maybe hadn't anticipated, and then it surprised you that it's happened?
Yeah, I think that people have really embraced it. So I've been to a lot of meetings where, it wasn't intentional or planned for me to be there, for example. So I know they weren't just putting it on for my benefit, where they were really using the words and embracing it. And it was a way of how they were then interacting in that meeting on a regular basis. So I think I've just been surprised at how engaging it is for people, how people have embraced it, come up with lots of creative ways to use the deck in team meetings or team building exercises and all different ways. So I've loved it, how they've taken it and made it their own and used it in a way that works for them best. So created a life of its own in the different teams. So that's been great. And then I think just one of the obstacles, I think the power of this is really in using it to drive change at an individual, team, and organizational levels. So encouraging that personal accountability, or helping people understand that actually I'm part of the solution. The way I show up and work with my team or work in this environment is our culture at the end of the day. So helping bring that closer into everybody in the organization, as opposed to something kind of out there that someone else is going to look after, has been a really important part of the journey. We've created good ways just to remind people. So, how are you helping your colleagues feel supported today? Or how are you helping people feel more confident today? Just to kind of encourage that understanding that we're all in this together.
Yeah, that's so wonderfully said. And what I'm hearing, because culture is really the way things work around here, and it is very much about like the accountability and the personal responsibility, and something from my perspective, working with you and your organization that has, I think, really made a difference is there has been high accountability. I remember coming into a workshop in May when we, this was like 4 months after we'd done the initial workshops, and They'd been culture champions that had been assigned in the different teams, and they'd worked with this in their way. And like you were saying, it was tailoring it to their team environment and what it meant to them. And they kind of did a little report back to me on what they'd noticed. And like, I just had like pages of all these things. And I was just like, this is amazing. This is why I do what I do. And then the accountability, like all these ideas, like this is where we actually looked at the top critical actions for the whole organization, of which there was lots, and we had to get it down to 5 and vote because there was just so many ideas. So that accountability has always been strong, and particularly the leaders, like doing that workshop with you and your leadership team, straight away. And I was still to this day impressed, like, Chris, the CEO, he was at all of those work for a week. There was 8 to 10 hours of workshops, various workshops when we were nutting out the culture with different teams. He was at every single one. Like you and the leaders, you showed up. And I think that was another thing from my perspective that really helped some of those challenges and obstacles. I don't know if you agree, but it's just my observation. What do you?
Yeah, 100%. They've been wonderful. And I think, that's been critical to making sure the power of it lives on, and it can kind of live on without one particular person asking the question or driving it forward. So they've really stepped up, and Chris has fully embraced it. I think he'd be the first person to say that he was a little apprehensive when I came to him and said, we're going to have a workshop using the emotional culture deck.
I know we had a chat, didn't we? It's like I was like, let's have a chat. So sound me out, get me to chat to him about, the work I was doing. And from then he's just fully embraced it. And it's been such a joy to work with you. I often say, like, you are my A-star client. Not that I'm grading, because it's important that we do grade, non-striving and all that. But yeah, it's been so great to see that the journey, and it's still going on. It kind of never ends. And I think that's an important realization, is that this is not something that you just do for a while and then you stop and it's all good. It is something that you have to keep coming back to.
Absolutely. So we'll check in on how everybody's feeling, get a read on that on a regular basis, so we can see how we're going and just keep our finger on the pulse if there's anything new to look at, because I guess those desired emotions may change at some point. And I hope they would, as we kind of do things to encourage some and minimize others, that we would see a change on our top 5.
Yeah. And, we're looking at putting the emotional culture kind of check-in into engagement survey and stuff like that. But also, you're totally right. And it's really good that you observe that they may well change. For example, we talked about the impacts of everything that's been going on the last 2 years. They will have an impact on, how we don't want to feel, but we realize we might. They will likely change. And the same with the top ones that, help your success individually and as a team, the environment that you're in, and also what you might need at that particular point in your career or in what's going on, it does change. So that's why it's important to keep checking in and doing that in an easy and accessible way. Yeah. So what would you say to other leaders that are and workplaces to kind of encourage them that are kind of like, the F word, feelings, emotions, don't know about that? What would you say to other leaders in workplaces to encourage them to embrace emotions at work and really start to look at their emotional culture?
I would encourage all leaders and everyone interested in creating a great culture to explore this more. Working with the emotional culture deck and with you, Lottie, guiding us along the way has really influenced our employee engagement, our employee experience, motivation, our team connection, and how well we feel connected with each other. And I think it really helps mitigate some of those risks around overwhelm, as I mentioned, burnout, and create a better environment for having some difficult conversations, as well as the impact on all the harder measures, so financial performance, absenteeism, employee engagement, turnover, the list goes on. So lots of great outcomes using this tool. So I encourage you to check it out and embrace it and have a play with your teams. I'm sure they'll love it too.
Yeah, just have a play.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And anything else you want to say, or any other resources or thoughts you want to share?
I think there's lots of great resources. So you have the canvases, which helped us capture the actions and rituals and the different ways to use the deck. So there's a lot of easy references that you can keep available for people to refer to. So I'd use those. And we bought everybody a deck at TMNZ. So that was important, because a lot of people have then taken that and not only used it at work, but used it with their families and at home. So it's got a life larger than just within TMNZ. So that's been great too.
Yeah, because these emotions, they go with us wherever we go, because it's kind of part of it. We don't leave them at work or leave them at home. So yeah, I think that was amazing that you invested in that. We've not, it wasn't like I was doing hard sell. You were like, no, we're just going to invest for everybody in the organization. And also that we did some of those that remotely, so them having it at home was really great at the time, because I think when we started this journey, Auckland was in lockdown for
we did. We had our first conversation the day that we went into lockdown, Lottie. I remember, because
yeah.
So yes.
Yeah.
So, well, that we started talking a year ago. Then that means I think.
Well, pretty much nearly a year ago. Well, thank you so much for coming along and having this conversation. There's so many gems in there, and I'm glad this is recorded so that I can go back and rewatch it. And I'm sure it will give a lot of value to people that are watching the conversation. We're very grateful that you joined us and gave your time today, and our mission to kind of humanize the workplace and help people tap into the power and the wisdom of their emotions. I feel very inspired by a lot of what you have said today, even though I've been on the journey with you. It's like been really inspiring, and you are inspiring to work with. Thanks to everybody that's joined us, and I look forward to having another F-Word conversation soon.
Thank you for having me. It's been great fun.
Thank you.